Brace yourself for this dynamic super teacher who transforms both teachers and students' experiences as she revamp and reimagine our system of learning. When she steps into a room, you will immediately feel the vibes and get your entire life. Not only will you gain insight, but you will also learn how to teach with excellence and level up the skills to be the best version of yourself. So be prepared to get your notebooks out and catch all this creativity she will be throwing and find yourself in the throne of authenticity. Please help me welcome Robin Queen Educator.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here. We're hosting Brilliance on a Monday. You all know how we do. We come to you every month, about 2 to 3 times a month, and bring you some amazing, brilliant educators. Now, you know, I am just excited about this episode, just like I'm always excited about every episode. But this one is super duper special. Why? Because we have the one, the only Coach Terry Travers in the house. Oh my gosh. You all, this is such a unique interview. So I really need you to listen up very, very closely. Get your pens and pads. You already know how we do. I need you all to think about how we can reimagine what education can look like with my guest today. Because not only did she reimagine it, but she actually did it. She did it, she's doing it, and she's doing it well. And so I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get my guest up on the stage today. But I want you to go right now. And I want you to get some parents that you know, because I know many of you talk to me a lot of times about, I just want better for my child. I want you to go and get some parents who are thinking about, how can I have a different type of or alternative type of education for my child, especially if you have teenagers and they are brilliant, but they are not thriving in school. Go get them. They should be watching this episode, because honestly, you really will learn today, by the end of this session, by the end of this Brilliance Live, how to support them in ways that you never even thought were possible. Or maybe you did think was possible, but you just didn't know how to do it. Oh my gosh, go get it. Share. I'm gonna bring up to the stage Miss Coach Terry Travers. Say hello to the people.
Hey. Thank you for that amazing introduction, Robin. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You are amazing. Listen, guys, I met this wonderful lady along the way of my journey as I was working through speaking and coaching and doing the things that I do and always getting better, because that's what we should be doing, right? And she's just become a friend, a sister, a jewel, an accountability partner. And she's just opened my eyes up to so many things. So talk to us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Well, thank you, Robin. It is great having you as a sister. Actually, I've really enjoyed the journey too. So I'm Coach Terry, and I help those parents that have brilliant kids, but they can't get them to go to school on time. They don't get their homework in. They don't take their tests. They're really struggling in school. They have a lot of anxiety. They fight all the time over homework, that kind of stuff. So I help those kids form their own education journey and path.
Tell us where you're from.
I am currently living in Tennessee. Yep. But I help kids all over.
I love that. So you help kids everywhere, worldwide. I absolutely just love your mission and your message. And so we'll get into that today. But I really want to hear a little bit about your story, because on this show, we believe that to empower people to be brilliant, it really comes from the heart. It comes from the journey. It comes from the struggle. And with you as our guest, Coach Terry, we really want to talk about how you have been on the journey to hone your brilliance. And in order to hone other people's brilliance, you have a story. You have something to share. So I told you all to go get the parents. Go ahead and put in the chat where you're tuning in from. And I really want you to hear about her story. And then what's your story? Think about your story and how we can overcome through that. So go ahead and talk to us about, your story. What got you so passionate about this work of redefining education, and especially with our teens, especially with like our high school students.
I love teens. I love working with teens. I've had friends tell me why teens. By the time they get there, they're done. They're like molded into who they are, and you can't help or change them. And I find that to be so wrong. I love teens because they're funny and they're just a joy to work with. Hormones and drama and all of that aside, they're just amazing.
Okay, everybody. So one of the things you all know we talk about how everybody is educating somebody somewhere and somehow, but we want to make sure they do it with excellence and equitable practices. So one reason why I brought Coach Terry on board for you all to really hear her story, her journey, is because she's a parent who educates, and she's an educator. And has redefined that system. And so that came from somewhere. And I know a lot of you passionate parents out there want to know, like, how do I help my child? But your journey is your wealth. And that's one thing we talk about a lot. So talk to us a little bit about your journey, Coach Terry, and how you got so passionate about redefining education, especially for your team.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So my journey began when I put my son into kindergarten years ago, and he was really struggling, not with kindergarten, I think, but with the practice of it all. And every day after school, he'd melt down. And we went through 3 principals between the beginning of school and December. And I talked to them about the problems that I was having and the issues and his extreme dislike and not wanting to come to school and then having trouble getting home. And each one promised they would evaluate and put him in a more advanced class so he's being more challenged. And the last principal, so the next principal would come and I'd have to start over. And the next principal came and I had to start over. I don't know what the deal was with the school that year, but the last principal sat me down and said, look, I've evaluated your son, and I find that he's doing fine in the class. There's no acting out and there seems to be no issues. So really the problem is with you. And if you were just a better parent, you wouldn't be having these issues. And I thought, okay, so, we're all learning as parents. And I understand that, especially with the first time, nobody's a perfect parent, but there was definitely a problem at school. So we took him home for Christmas. We talked about it. We decided not to put him back. And we were so frustrated that we didn't even go back and get his supplies, his bedroll and stuff. So we put the notice of intent in. We lived in Virginia that we were going to homeschool, and we started homeschooling. And then I got a job offer and I wasn't going to be able to be home. So we put him in a private school to finish kindergarten out. It was really rocky, but the private school was a lot more challenging. So there were benefits, and that made it a little bit more doable. First grade was rocky. There were some issues with reading because the teacher thought that since he stuttered a little bit, he needed to be in the entry level reading. And that was not challenging because he was actually reading much, much, much higher. And then there were issues with math, with she was having the kids do these really high intensive, very demanding, short burst math tests every single day, and literally teaching all of the kids to hate math. But we muddled through it. And then second grade came along, and there was enough going on that kept him challenged and engaged. But there were some minor issues, but the report cards were all really good. And at the end of the year, you have your parent teacher conference where they talk about things and set you up for the next year. And I took him in, and there was little chairs sitting outside the classroom. And I asked him to sit in the chair while I went in to talk to the teacher. And she's like, oh, no, bring him in, bring him in. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, well, I just want to tell you, I'm thinking about holding your son back this year. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, I'm going to hold him back. And I said, but he's got like his report card is EEE for excellent, right? That was their grading system for elementary. And I said, I don't understand why you hold him back. And she's like, well, because he sits and he stares out the window and doesn't pay attention to me. And I'm like, but his homework's good, right? And she's like, yeah. And I said, he passes the test. And she's like, yeah, no, he gets A's on all the tests. I'm like, so why are you holding him back? And she's like, well, because he's not paying attention and he daydreams. And if he doesn't get that under control, he's going to be a failure. Literally told my child he was going to be a failure.
How did that make you feel? Like what went through your mind as a parent, as a, just as a person?
I was just shocked, right? Because this is the kind of behavior I was getting in the public school, and now I'm getting it in a private school. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So I basically asked her, I said, so you think that you're going to take this kid who's apparently bored, right, and make them sit through you and this same material again? How do you think that's going to go? Right? Because I knew how it was going to go, and it was not a pretty picture for anybody. And so we ended up I was in a position where I could homeschool them again. And so what's funny is like when all of us decide to homeschool and we pull our kid out of the public school or private school or whatever it is, we take the curriculum and the school and we bring it home, right? Then we're out there researching, great curriculums and blah, blah, blah. Well, my son was not happy about that because I literally brought school home. We had a schedule. We were going to do this. We were going to do that. We were teaching that chopped up curriculum. And so meanwhile, that whole education and the research stuff intrigued me enough to go back into college myself and get an education degree and licensure. Wow. And so I'm working on that and I'm researching all the time and I'm working with my child at home. And pretty soon I've got 2 children that I'm homeschooling. And it's not going well for either one of them. They're both neurodivergent. They both don't do well sitting at a desk and learning things that aren't connected. And so I'm struggling with that. And yet I'm in this licensure program. And really every single class I take is just getting more and more frustrating because it's all about learning how to manage the classroom, right? How to teach the children to sit down, shut up, listen, and behave. And how to dump disconnected bits of information into their head and prepare them for test. And it's not preparing them for life. So I'm dealing with this at home and I see the disconnect, and I'm dealing with it in the college program and I see the disconnect, and my frustration soared. So I changed my degree and I thought, well, I'll get a master's or something later where I can really focus on education. And so I finished that degree program in a different way and ended up with just a minor in education. And I continued to experiment at home to see what would work with the kids. And then I still had my graphic design business. So I got a contract with NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. It was really cool. I did not want to turn it down, but they wanted me on site. Excuse me. They wanted me on site full time. And I was like, oh, I can't do that full time. And it was a 3-hour commute from where I lived. So I had worked for them for years and I'd done a lot of remote work. And they're like, okay, well, we can have you up here 3 times a week, but it was a really collaborative effort. So I needed to be there. And my dad was living with us and he's like, hey, go, I got this. You go do the job. I'll homeschool the kids. I thought, okay, it's a 6-month thing. No big deal. So I commuted. I worked up. There was really long days. So the days that I was home, I still had work to do for Noah and I was exhausted. And the kids, I wasn't, my dad was just helping with the kids. So nothing was happening, right? They were getting behind. and this is where I really learned that there is no behind. Like all of that is just contrived stuff, right? There's no behind. There's no that whole one size fits all. They should at 8, they should be doing this. I had a dyslexic, autistic child, my second one, who taught himself to read at 11 because no matter what we did to try to teach him to read when he was younger, nothing worked. And I tried everything. All he did was
himself to read. What did he do? What did he use?
Playing Minecraft and Roblox and stuff, because just working with him and scaffolding and just helping him explore words and stuff as he needed help with things, because everything that he was interested involved reading, so he had to learn. And
so he had interest in reading,
right?
But like, is this the same child that was like told that he's not?
No, that one was reading words when he was 1.
Wow.
So I had one that was like reading really super early, and then one I couldn't teach at all. So and like Peter Gray, I don't know if you've heard of Peter Gray. He's so he's done a lot of research, and the research shows that if a child is allowed to learn to read on their own, boys typically learn between 10 and 12. And and so my son fit right into that. So where was I? So they weren't learning anything. The job with Noah got expanded. It ended up being 1.5 years, and the kids were learning nothing. And I was literally starting to panic. I was like, oh my God, I'm failing my children. They're not learning. My dad is not helping. He's either sleeping in the chair or telling jokes or building Legos with my son. So no learning. But then all of a sudden they were asking questions. And I was like, what? Where did that come from? And we were exploring things and going into depth on things. And they were asking for tools to learn languages. And so at first they were just burning up YouTube and Netflix and Lego building. And then it turned into learning languages and just like exploring. And what I realized was when I stepped out of the picture and stopped trying to control what they were learning.
Yes. Let's pause right there. Say that one more time.
When I stepped back and stopped controlling what they were learning.
Yeah, I think that transcends like education. Sometimes think, you mentioned earlier, and I want to pause because you said a lot of amazing things about your story, and you're continuously gonna share. But you mentioned that you were in this system trying to support as a parent. You talked a lot about how you were told basically you were a bad parent. There wasn't a lot of collective, like, let's work through this and figure out how we can work together. It's like, go home. So you went home, you brought school home. Your children were not happy because they're like, what? Already? There's a reason why I'm already like bored with class.
Right.
And then you're trying all these things. You take an effort, like an amazing effort to go back to school, try to figure this out for yourself. And you're like, what is this? You mentioned neurodivergent learning. I wanted you to speak to that because some people may not know what that is.
Oh, so neurodivergent children. So children with anywhere on the autism spectrum, ADHD, ADD. My son was diagnosed with ODD. I was like, what is that? Mm-hmm. Oppositional defiance disorder.
Right.
Basically, I don't like what you're trying to stuff in my head, and I'm gonna fight it. Like.
Pretty much, no. And I'm not downplaying any thing because there's lots of research and there's a lot of opposing points and things. But this is your journey, this is your story, and this is how you've been able to figure out. Wait a minute, hold on. Maybe it's not what you're saying. Maybe not a bad thing. Maybe school is not supposed to be this way. And then you come to a space where you're like, okay, I have to figure this out. Now I have 2 children. One who taught himself to read. I put up on the screen earlier, I don't know if you guys seen it, self-directed learning. And you mentioned Peter Gray, and I want you to talk a little bit about that connection to your story as well. With self-directed learning, like that's a thing, guys. I just want you all to know.
So in the homeschooling world, it's called unschooling, and the whole concept freaks people out because Lord knows if you are not telling a child what they need to learn, they are not going to learn what they need. And I have found that to be so wrong. It's so wrong. Wow. So yeah, Peter Gray does a lot of studies. And as a matter of fact, when we started, as I got more into the unschooling journey, I ended up like being on news shows and talking about it because people are like trying to figure out what it is. And then I got a call from France TV. They came and interviewed us, followed the family around because they'd never heard of such a concept, unschooling. And then they went up and actually met with Peter Gray. And so part of the segment is with our family and part of the segment was with Peter Gray. And they broadcast that in France, which was really, really interesting. So, yeah, so it's been a journey. It really has been a journey. So for the last 15 years, as I started unschooling my children and allowing them to direct their education, and it's not just about just ignoring them and letting them go, right? So for a little while, I was working on that NOAA project. I did just ignore them and let them go, not ignore them, but I wasn't worried about their education because I had something else I needed to do. But that led to them actually what they call deschooling. And so one of the ways that you transition into this is just to let go and not focus on anything, not call anything learning. And I accidentally deschooled my children. So they let go of all of the angst and stuff surrounding education and learning and fell in love with learning because they weren't being forced to learn. So yeah, so that was part of the journey. And that's part of the thing that anybody who does homeschooling well suggests to people who are new to homeschooling, just let them deschool for a while. Don't even think about pulling out a textbook or curriculum or anything. Just let them chill and relax and learn and get curious again. You have to allow them that time to build up their own curiosity because that's kind of squelched in school. They don't have time for it. I'm not saying that, teachers are bad, but in a system like that where things have to happen and you've got, stuff you have to meet for the system, you don't have time to allow all of that curiosity, and you don't have time to allow the kids to go in all the different directions, my goodness, that they'd want to go, right?
Yeah.
So that's the joy of this. So as I moved along, I had other parents going, "Can you homeschool my kid? Because y'all do really amazing stuff." So the more I got involved, the more kids were over at the house, the more, and then as my children moved into their teens, I had a lot of teens around and a lot of teens from school, and everybody wanted to jump on the bandwagon. So I ended up working with a lot of teens and seeing.
I wonder why. Like, if you think about our system and where we see a lot of dropouts at, the data shows where we see students just checked out and all of that, I really see a lot of teenage, I don't know about you. So that makes sense. I mean, it's like you just said it. They want to learn. Children do want to learn. We as people, I feel like we're designed to do that, like to learn, to grow, to explore. But some of what you mentioned earlier, some of the systems that are in place really do bind people and cause them to kind of check out. And it's like, why am I doing this? And we forget our why. Their children forget their why. They become, these misfits. And they don't have to be. We don't have to be or rebel from systems that can actually be shifted and redefined. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. So I love working with the teens because they are checking out, right? A lot of them between anxiety and other things.
Change of life. I mean, there's a lot that happens.
Yeah, there's so much going on for them, right? The hormones and all of it. And the pressure, because then once you get into high school, there's that pressure. Well, what are you going to do when you graduate?
Oh my gosh, you have to have all the answers.
How are you going to pay for your apartment? That kind of, so there's so much pressure.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So much better. Yeah. So now you have all these children coming to your house, like, I want, teach me, teach me. Talk to us a little bit about your how you develop Astrolabe Academy on your journey connected to this.
So at first we had a lot of teens coming to the farm, and we did a lot of programs for teens and a ton of field trips. And every time I went on a field trip, I'd put it out to the community, and we'd end up going with a Yukon full of kids, right, to wherever. So eventually that led us, I had enough parents going, can you, for the love of God, can you teach my child? Can you homeschool my child? And in Virginia, that wasn't legal. You can't homeschool somebody else's child, but you can start a private school. So I started by starting a private school. And unfortunately, I started it just before COVID hit and shut everything down. And in Virginia, the closures were really prolonged. And so I ended up closing that school, and we ended up selling the farm and moving out of Virginia. We just used the opportunity to make some life changes that we had wanted to make. And in the process, I still want to help teens. I still have that whole education thing is still heavy on my mind. I've done a ton of research, and I'm basically moving into that as a career to help kids. So I'm also a coach. And I figured one thing that a lot of kids who are doing self-directed learning need is coaching, right? You're not telling them what to learn, but you're guiding them, helping them, scaffolding them, providing that extra support that maybe the parents can't because they're working or they are afraid, right? So there's a lot of limitations that come up that keep parents from jumping on, from allowing their children to pursue their education this way. So Astrolabe Academy is a high school that doesn't have a curriculum. We don't teach math. We don't teach English. We teach life skills. We share every week we meet. We share life skills. Like last week we covered, how to really get into research and how to use Google and use quotes and use all those research tools.
Things you'll need now. Things will
right?
need.
Right. All those little extra operands that you can add to the Google search to really refine your search queries, and then how to, we brainstormed and talked through how you can make sure what you're finding is real information, right? And how to like use your critical thinking skills to figure out if this is valid information that's worth sharing and including in your research and all of that. And we had great discussions. We have discussions about mindset and love languages and like all kinds of stuff that is going to be beneficial to them, finances, all that stuff. But we don't have a curriculum and we don't teach. So when we get together and we talk about these things, it's very interactive, and they all share, their own experiences and ideas on it. And we help shape those ideas, right? So we meet once a week for that. And we meet once a week for a student mastermind where they have their own projects and their things they're doing. So when they run into challenges, and they help each other through their challenges. And then we meet one-on-one individually with each student for their own coaching session privately once a week.
Oh, wow.
And then we meet with the parents as the parents needed, or, we touch base with the parents regularly to make sure things are going well. So basically the academy is a scaffolding process for self-directed learning. We help them, if they know what they want to do when they graduate, if they have an idea. Like we have one student who wants to be in culinary, do baking, desserts. I think she wants to be a pastry chef. So what we can do is then backwards engineer. Well, you've got 2 or 3 or whatever years till you graduate. Here are the things, what do you need? What do you think you need? And we help them like backwards engineer this, and then set up like yearly goals and monthly goals and things that they can do. But they create their schedule, they create their tasks, they create their goals, and then we help hold them accountable for it. If they don't meet it, we're like, okay, let's talk about what's coming up. What are the real challenges? Is it a mental block, or is it that kind of stuff. So that's what the school does. Plus we connect them with mentors and stuff.
I'm really interested in, now there's a lot of questions that come with this. I know there's a lot of controversy around doing education this way, but what have been the successes of like having a coaching style of education versus like teaching content that is needed? What has been like the success, and maybe what has been a challenge?
So my program is new. I don't have students that have graduated and moved into the world yet. I do know a lot of unschooling youth that have moved into the world very successfully. Some of them are in college. None of them that wanted to go to college have not been able to get into the college of their choice, not one. And they tackle life in a different way because they're not, they bring that curiosity and the critical thinking skills that they've developed into college and into their jobs. So all of them that I know are really successfully moving into adulthood and doing it really well. I have a friend and mentor that I've been working with for a number of years now. His name is Wes Beach, and he is a retired teacher in California that started an unschooling program like this. He started his own high school called Beach High years ago. And in over the 20 years, he's graduated like 1,600 students. And they have all just flourished, right? So sometimes there's a challenge when you apply into college, you have to jump through a few extra hoops to show them, because the transcript that you have isn't a normal transcript. We do narrative transcripts, and the colleges are starting to become more and more familiar with alternative styles of learning and more comfortable with it. So, but there can be a perceived, the biggest challenge that we have is in the minds of like, so a parent chooses to do this, allow their child, they're going to have like this barrage of stuff coming at them from family, well-meaning family. Oh my gosh, you can't let your child do this. They're not going to learn what they need. They don't have what's required. So even though all of the statistics coming out of the school system are showing that like a huge percentage of kids they can read, but they don't really understand what they're reading, right? So they're basically functionally illiterate. Most of them can't get into college math. So the colleges have had to completely redo their entry-level math programs to get kids up to speed for college level math. So there's all of these data and statistics, but yet our mindset is we've got to do this. We're so trained. We got to have the subjects chopped up this way. We got to, there's so many requirements. And what we're finding is when the students are learning in context, when they're deep diving into the things that they're interested, it involves reading, it involves writing, it involves research, it involves critical thinking, it involves math. My son, when he was 11, this was one of the first things that happened when we started our unschooling journey. He came to me, he was in a 4-H club, a goat club. We had a couple of goats, just like 2. And he's like, Mom, I found out that I could get a loan to start a business from the USDA as a youth loan. And apparently they had loans for like 1 or 2% or something for the youth. And it had to be paid by the time they were 18, it had to be paid back. I was like, great, what do you need to do? So he went and found out what he needed to do. He developed a spreadsheet. I helped him put together a little business plan. And when he was ready, I drove him to the USDA office. He was 11.
Wow.
I did not get out of the car because I did not want to influence it.
Oh my.
He walked through those doors, made his pitch, literally walked out with a check for $5,000 to start his goat business.
What?
Yes. Research had already researched the things that he would need for the goats, like the shelter and where to buy it. And then started researching goat herds that were for sale from people that were like shutting down their goat business or whatever. And we ended up taking our trailer and buying a whole goat herd and bringing it home and starting his business.
Wow,
And
that is phenomenal.
he deep dove into it. He learned all about goat health and herbal remedies and like all the different diseases that they have. And I mean, by the time this kid graduated from 4-H, people were calling him to get help and information on, my goat's doing this. What do I do?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. I think that's when I met you, you were telling me about this story, and I'm sitting here like, what? And yeah. I absolutely love that. I guys, we're going to go for a quick break, but when we come back, I want to like really talk about your mission now and what you're doing and how other people can get involved, because you really do help parents to see in different ways how education can be, and educators. And even before we go to our break, I just want to, kind of situate position some of the things I heard you say. Within schools right now, we have a lot of issues with, engagement. And, I talk about it all the time. But that brilliance, if we don't bring that brilliance into the classroom, we don't invoke the brilliance in our students, just like you did with your child. To me, it's education. We are all educating somebody. But I love the way that you're guiding and coaching. You've guided and coached your own children, and now you're doing it with other families and other children. But it's more about, for me, allowing children to be free to explore what they are interested in. And you're not just saying, hey, just do whatever you want. That's the difference. That's the argument that I feel like I hear people saying, like, oh.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's not that, right? It's you literally, you research. I heard you say you researched with him. I hear you say you, you set the conditions, bottom line. You set conditions, but he went and explored. He was the coach of his own path, but you were the coach of making sure he got there to where he was trying to go, and explored with him. You have all the answers. Go ahead and
so, well, yeah. So as they set their goals, like, this is what I want to learn about, then I help them, figure out what the steps were in that goal, and then to take those steps. So if a week went by and all we were doing was gaming, then we would sit down and talk about why we diverged from that goal. And this is what I help students with today, because sometimes motivation becomes an issue. And a lot of times if that happens, so what a lot of parents don't realize is when kids are like diving into their phones or their games, and that's all they're doing, they're really just numbing themselves from something they don't want to face or handle, right? So if it's anxiety about school, or things aren't going well at home, there's a lot of strife, they're going to be just hiding in their games.
Yeah.
And so when one of my children, or children that I work with, start to hide and they're not getting the things that they set for their goals done, that was part of their passion, then we coach them, and we talk about what comes up. What are you feeling? Why, what is it about this particular task? Like, I have a student, one of my students is developing a board game. And one of the things that he had to do, and this student is neurodivergent, he's absolutely brilliant, and is also has cerebral palsy, which is interesting. So there's a little bit of a speech impediment, but this kid is amazing. And they had to reach out to manufacturers to start getting pricing, because they're going to do a Kickstarter for the game. So there's a lot of research and manufacturers and putting together the parts list and like math. And there's so much involved in everything these kids do that pulls all these subjects together, right? And puts them in context so they make sense. So we were avoiding that. We were gaming, we were doing other things. So a week goes by and you're like, okay, sometimes you have a bad week. The second week goes by, we're not making any progress. Then we start talking about it. It's like, why do you think you're not making progress? What is coming up for you when you think about reaching out to these manufacturers? And so what was coming up was just, he was terrified. He was afraid to reach out to the manufacturers. He felt there was a lot of what do we call it, imposter syndrome, right? Who am I to reach out to these, like, so, and then as we crossed that bridge, we talked about things. We helped him like change his mindset on it. He reached out to the manufacturers, got a bunch of information, had to ask more questions, narrowed it down to one manufacturer, and we moved through all of that. So a lot of times, I don't remember why I got on this subject, but
it was the connection to, you know, like the work that went, the depths of the work that went into the goal that he set.
Yeah, exactly.
All the academics.
So they set the goals. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not telling them what to study. I'm not telling them what to deep dive in. But the skills that they learn now as teens is going to help them when they're doing a job, because there's always pieces of a job that are scary or are boring, right? That you don't want to do, that you have to do. So if you develop the skills and the tools to manage your time through those experiences, now it's going to help you as an adult. So those are also the kinds of things that we help the kids with. So when you're in a regular classroom, the teacher's telling you, read these chapters, do this test, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're telling you what to do. And everybody's, one of the biggest arguments is like, oh, well, how are they going to be able to schedule if they haven't had a schedule? Well, they're learning how to manage their time. They're learning how to manage their activities. They're developing that tool set when they're in a system that's telling them what to do and when to do it and when it's due and blah, blah, blah.
Expect someone to do that for them.
They're not learning those. They're not learning how to manage time, right? So much.
Right.
So
as much as, they would if they were.
Right. As if their whole thing was free, right? They're learning how to manage the time within the constraints of the system.
She has so much rich information. As you're speaking, like her and I, we work more, like we work in a way where it's like, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to say to teachers and educators.
Right.
Find how we're doing things in their classrooms, because really, there's all different types of ways that we can learn. It can be through homeschooling, microschooling, but we do need to have the mindset of unschooling in the way that we've done. That's what I feel like I've heard from you today.
Right. Yeah.
Where we're so directed that we can't allow it for any self-direction or even like purpose forward. And so I love having these discussions with you, Coach Terry, because it just makes me think. And as you were speaking, I was thought about this, if we really do believe that students can learn, and we say that, and I believe that all these systems that are set up is because many people are like, I wanted to see children learn. I want to see them grow and thrive in life, but we don't always set it up in the way that is going to get them there. So the way you're describing right here, right now is so powerful as a parent educator, and advocate for teens, and an advocate for parents who want to see better. Helps me think about what choices are we making for all of our students, because had we let our children who don't fit in the system that we have now just sit in a classroom or in a space and waste away their gifts and talents, they wouldn't have had that experience that you just shared with us. So your stories are so powerful. I love to know that, students who have different needs and different things, it's not about, okay, let's put them in a corner and give them, like, that's not okay. And we'll talk about her mission forward and her message to parents. And so we'll see you guys in just about 15 seconds. We'll be right back, and we'll see you soon. Okay, we are back. If you are just tuning in with us, please make sure you share this out. If you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay. You know how we do. I always love to read your comments again, and Coach Terry will read them again. I know there's some questions that you might have for her, and she will answer them right there in that chat. You can go again, like we shared before we went to break. You can go right here to her website, and you can actually, number one, figure out how you can have your child be a part of this academy. I really want you all to take advantage of that. Support my sister today. She is brilliant, and she does brilliant things and has done brilliant things for some time. So on the screen you see there, where you are, but welcome back to the Hosting Brilliance show. And I am live with my guest, Coach Terry Travers, and she is an educator, coach, and a mother, parent, and teen advocate, founder and director of Astrolabe Academy. She just went through her journey. Her journey, guys, this is the quote I put up here all the time. Your journey is your wealth. For every step, every challenge, every triumph along the way, it enriches you beyond measure of material possessions. And that's what I feel that my guest today has shared through her journey. It's just even beyond material possessions. We're talking about impact for life, children living and thriving in their brilliance because we choose as educators to be brilliant in ourselves and making sure students are well. So let's talk about your message. Talk to us about your message.
Education is not just about teaching children what to think, but empowering them to think for themselves and discover their unique potential in the world.
Mm.
And I feel like the education system that we have today is more about telling them what to think than empowering them.
Mm. Mm. Thank you. I love that message, guys. Let that marinate. Pause. Sela, think about that. Our world is changing. We see many like holes in our education system. And there are some good things, but it's just not sustainable at this point. We've got to start redefining, reimagining, and relearning what learning is. So thank you for that. I also know that you have a focus here that you help parents really let go of the mindset. We talked about that earlier. Of what can happen in a designated classroom. If you're a parent that is like, I don't really have time to homeschool or micro school my child, but I really want to be involved, what advice do you have for parent educators who really are not accepting? Maybe they get an IEP and it says this is some of the limitations there. And it's like, okay, but what do I do next? What advice do you have for them to be a big player in their, in the collaborative and collective work in or outside of the school for their child?
Well, being involved with your child is huge, right? And it's not about the amount of time. So like a lot of parents work and they don't have a tremendous amount of time with their kids, but it's about the quality of the time that they spend with them. And, one of the biggest things I think is just listening, being able to listen. So one of the biggest lessons I had to learn was to actively listen to my children. My oldest, my son, we went through some serious problems for a while. And I got this book called Have a New Kid by Friday. Like we were having really big issues. We were clashing big time. A lot of it was about the curriculum and the schooling and all of that stuff. And somebody recommended a book called Have a New Child by Friday by, I think it's Rob Lemon, or I'm not sure of the author. I'm pretty sure it's Lemon, but Have a New Kid by Friday. It was a little tiny book. And I recommend it so many times to parents. It changed my life. And it taught me. So it wasn't really about having a new kid. It was about how to interact with the child. And what it taught me was like I was causing the problems. So it taught me how to be a better parent. And then listening to my children and being part of their lives has led to so many changes within me. Like they have made me who I am today because I listen and I grow with them. So that's my recommendation. It is just step one, listening to your child. So when they tell you that, or they show signs that they're stressed about school or they're anxious about school, sit down and actually listen to what they have to say about it. And then if you really understand the problem and you're not judging them and they can be very honest and open, it gives you more of a footing to help them, whether it's working with the school, if they're willing to work with you, or finding an alternative. Because I'm a micro school. There's dozens and dozens of micro schools all over the place, like like hundreds and thousands of them at this point. And they have so many different cool programs. It's just a matter of like exploring what the educational options are in your area that best meet the needs of your family and your child.
Yes, thank you so much for that. One more question I want to ask you before we start to wrap up is around the mission that you're on with guiding teens in their education. So there are parents who's like, I need help, I need support, you know. So what can you do to support them through the workshops and conversations that you have ready for parents and that you do with parents now?
So I appreciate you asking that. So even if it's not about a high school kid, I never like not take a phone call and talk a parent through answer questions and stuff that they have and provide some information that might be helpful. So anybody's always welcome to reach out. You can find a link on the website to schedule a phone call, and I'm happy to talk to people. I also offer a full day, very interactive workshop for parents that they can bring their kids to, teens especially. And it helps them to let go of the mindset. We do a lot of exercises and stuff. And I am happy to bring that workshop to any community. And we also have a free program for teens. If you go to the website and look for career conversations, we have a free program for teens to help any teen in the United States. We have a Discord server, and we connect teens with mentors and people in their field that they are interested in pursuing. And so we have open discussions with, like, for instance, I had some of the students indicated that they wanted to talk to somebody about, everybody wants to do gaming, right? So they're like, oh, I want to do gaming testing. So I brought on a woman who started her own gaming testing company and now has like 8 or 10 employees. And she has 2 divisions. One is gaming testing and one is development. So they have contracts where they can actually do some of the fixes that they find. And so those 2 ladies came on and they just talked to the kids about the ins and outs and what they needed, what kind of mindset tools that they have found to be successful in their endeavor in launching and growing this business and succeeding. And so it was a great conversation. So we do that. We do those conversations with kids. So look for career conversations. I'm always looking for people in specific career fields to talk to the kids too. So anybody who wants to mentor and help with that exchange is welcome to sign up as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your impact. Even today on our show, we have so much more we can delve into, and I'm sure you will be back. This is a new concept for many of my listeners, and to really understand how to move forward to impact all of our children, every last one of them, no matter their learning abilities. There's many schools for all types of children, micro schools. But what I really love about your school for teens and how you work with high school students is sometimes I feel like, and I've seen a lot of high school students kind of fall to the wayside. And it's like, you're old enough now.
Right.
Do your own thing, and that guidance is so needed. That coaching is so needed. You are an amazing coach. That's why they call you Coach Terry, honey. Coach Terry, you coach in such a brilliant ways, not only the teens, but the parents. And so I thank you for being a part of the Hosting Brilliance show. What final words, nuggets, or anything else that you'd like to share on the way out so that people can, have it sit with them? And I'll also put some things down here that my takeaways from what you were saying, which is a lot, but it really was let them set their goals. That's my takeaway. And that you guide and coach them through, but really understand how to do that. And then I really want my next steps, and I'm hoping you all are thinking about this. what does it really look like to have an impact of self-directed learning from my viewpoint in what I do. So everybody who's listening here as a parent, how can we, as a parent, as an educator, as an auntie, some people are like, I'm the one that helps my child, my nieces and nephews. How can you have impact through self-directed learning with the children that you serve, that you love, that you want to see thrive in this world? So Coach Terry, take us out with some closing words and any other advice as we go.
I just want to encourage parents, because I see it all the time in the groups. The parents are like, at least 50% of the comments in the parenting groups are, my teen, blah, blah, blah. My teen doesn't, is struggling in school or hates school, or I'm fighting about school. Is to just stop for a minute and step back and listen to your child. Allow them, in a non-judgmental way, allow them to tell you what's really going on. And that, if there's been a lot of strife, that conversation isn't going to just flow out right away. You have to kind of give them some space and not take things personal, because none of this is about you. It's really about them. So that's my little tidbit.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you. And we can find you on social media. I will drop that into the chat for you all. Go ahead and go there right now. Connect with Coach Terry if you are a parent, or if you know a parent who has been really trying to figure out what are my next steps? How do I help my team? What do I do? And the first thing you can do, like Coach Terry said, is listen. Be non-judgmental. If they're in the school system and you're feeling like it's not working, remember what I said earlier. I know I said I butchered this, but no, I really didn't. This is what I wanted to say. If you believe in your child, if you believe your students can learn, then learn what, why, when, and where they can thrive. So we're out of here today. We are done. We've hosted our Brilliance on this Monday. Go Coach Terry. Go Coach Terry. I'm so excited for your academy. I love what you've been doing. Guys, don't forget astrolabeacademy.com. Go check her out. You can check her out on various platforms. She even has a Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook. There's so much more. LinkedIn. You will see it in the chat. But go ahead, go check her out. Go ahead and contact her if you want to talk more about your options and ways, because you are not alone in this journey. Your children are not alone, and we do not have to accept the status quo. So remember that your journey is your wealth. Let the journey go forward and allow your children to be brilliant. All right, we hope that we were able to empower your brilliance, and that you were able to understand how to educate and redefine our system one teen at a time today. Thank you, Coach Terry. We're so glad to have you. Say bye to the people.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I am Coach Terry with Astrolabe Academy. Can I restart that?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
All right.